All right, we are back. We're about halfway through Stoicon 2022, which is going quite well so far. So we have now our workshop after that great plenary talk. So this is another major featured component of that. And I'm going to introduce Kathryn Koromilas in just a moment as she comes up. But I do want to say something else that goes back to Stoicon 2021. So Kathryn gave a shorter talk at that time, some of which is, I think, similar content to what we're doing here. And when we sent out the questionnaires afterwards about like, what did you like? What didn't you like? Her talk was the number one. We love this. We want more of this. So, we thought it would make good sense to bring her back and to have her do a similar but extended kind of workshop. We're not going to be doing breakout rooms like we did last year with Tim LeBon's. Instead, it'll be one long workshop. But I'm very happy to have Kathryn Koromilas here ready to lead you into this. She is a writer, a teacher, a writing and creativity coach. She's also been a co-organizer of the recent Stoicon-x Women Conference. And there was another one in the spring that I think you and Brittany also did as well. I think that might have just been called Stoic Care, right?
That was Brittany's Stoic Care, yeah.
And she is also a community manager, Writers Hour manager, coach at the London Writers Salon. She's the founder of the Stoic Salon. So she does a lot of things with writing, in particular with journaling, as she's going to tell you. And so I'm just going to turn it right over to her so we can stay on track as far as time. Welcome to the Stoicon, and we're glad to hear what you have to say.
Thank you so much, Greg, for the introduction. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm actually a little nervous, so I think I need to take a bit of a deep breath. And why don't you all join me here, taking a deep breath. I hope you had a nice break. And here we are. This is certainly billed as a storytelling workshop. It's going to be kind of part me talking, hopefully not too much, but knowing me, there will be a bit of rambling talk, part reflection, part an invitation to write things down. So you are going to need some writing tools. So, in pen, paper, typewriter, app, go off and grab them and let me know in the chat if you are ready and you've got your tools and you're ready to go. Give me an emoji or something in the chat to let me know. And while you're getting organized, I am going to clarify our objectives here. So we will be exploring the story of Heracles or Hercules. Now, this is the strongest, the greatest, the biggest, the weirdest, I think, hero in all of ancient Greece, and his story still lingers today. We're going to use this story to begin reflecting on a personal level, and also responding to 3 Stoic invitations. So first of all, the invitation to choose your life path and to choose it mindfully and philosophically and deliberately. We probably want to choose a Stoic path. So what does that look like? And can the Heracles story help us, guide us in some weird way? Second, the invitation to find your superpowers. And yes, that is a bit of a clickbait word there, but I'm thinking from a Stoic perspective, our superpowers are kind of our natural talents, our disposition, which we often might ignore or forget because there's so much noise going on around us about, and narratives telling us what to do, what is right, what is wrong, that sometimes maybe we forget who we are and how we ought to live. So I'm going to try and bring that power back to us by finding our own superpowers. Or maybe our superpowers are talents and skills that we've seen in heroes in stories, in fables, or real life role models. And the third invitation is an invitation to identify your role in life and to act in a way that is appropriate to that role. And Chris talked about the 4 roles earlier, so that's already given us some theoretical content to work on. All righty, let me just quickly have a look in the chat to see if you're all ready to get started. And for some reason, I can't see the chat, which is going to be a bit of a disappointment, but I'm sure I can work that out. What I probably will do is stop sharing my screen, checking the chat, and then popping back in. I can see that you've all, you're ready to go. Okay, that's probably what I'm going to do. I'm just going to interrupt my screen sharing so I can see the chat. All right. So why storytelling? Now, I can sit here for hours with you all. And talk about storytelling. But let's start with this. Someone once said, tell me the facts and I'll learn. Tell me the truth and I'll believe. Tell me a story and it will live in my heart forever. And everyone, grab your hands and just place them on top of your chest. I know that sounds a bit woo, but why not? And just hold them over your heart and think back to that very first story that you heard that touched your heart, that broke your heart, that maybe shifted something in you, that opened a door. What was it? Have a think, just hold it in your mind for a second. And if you like, you can share it in the chat. I'd love to know what those first stories were for you. My first story was Charlotte's Web, in which there was a little pig living on a farm. And of course, as a pig, he was going to grow up and be sent to the slaughterhouse. But a really clever spider, a heroic spider, used all her powers to save this pig. And that story really shifted something in me, and especially my relationship to animals. And I've met other people who quote the Charlotte's Web story as a story that inspired their veganism or vegetarianism. So stories can be pretty powerful. In fact, the Heracles story was something so powerful that it lived in the heart of one of the most cynical cynics, Diogenes. Diogenes was asked once, is there anyone whom you strive to emulate? And he said, yeah, Hercules. And as you can see in those pictures, there's a bit of a disconnect there. Hercules is like this very strong character with a lion's skin and a club, and he's killing one of the most dangerous beasts ever to live on this planet, the Hydra. And Diogenes is there in his little ruggedy old cloak and carrying a stick. So I'm not sure that Diogenes wanted to emulate Hercules physically, but maybe in another way. So let's explore what lived in the heart of Diogenes to want him to emulate Hercules. Let's see. All right, it's time to warm up a bit and do a bit of writing. I'm going to give you about 4 or 5 prompts over the next hour, and you're just going to be invited to just quickly respond without thinking too much. And hopefully we can share a bit as well, time permitting. So have a think of a hero in a story that you would emulate or have wanted to emulate or have emulated. List their top 3 qualities and behaviors, and have a think in a parallel sort of a way. Would anyone want to emulate you as you are right now? As you're living your life right now, are you a person that someone would want to emulate? And if not, what qualities and behaviors would you need to develop in order to be that person that people would want to emulate? So I'm just going to give you a minute just to scroll some things on some paper or type them onto a digital notebook. And when you're ready, I would love to invite you to the chat to share anything that comes up for you. And just a bit of chat etiquette, everyone. Just let's all agree that this is a safe and a sacred space, and we're all here in community to help each other live excellent lives. So do share and respond in the chat, and do so with unconditional positive regard. Okay, let's see how we're going there. I'm just going to quickly stop sharing my screen again. Unfortunately, my chat box is hidden. So I would like to see if you've got anything happening there in the chat. Oh, the Epic of Gilgamesh, feel interesting. Sorrow over the loss of a friend, and King Lear, absolutely. All right. So let me know how you are going with your story of a hero that you would emulate. If you're not sharing in the chat, that's okay. We will just move on. Hold those thoughts and we'll develop this over the next few minutes. I'm going to ask you, and maybe just explore with you, why Heracles? Why Hercules? Why did the Stoics mention Hercules? I'm going to bring up the Stoics in a bit, but for now, let's just dive into some biographical data of this mega superhero. Heracles lived a varied life full of amazing struggles, really varied. He sort of killed people, he killed monsters, he had contemplative moments, he suffered, he was tormented for a lifetime. So let's just dive into this story. Heracles, god, man, hero. He was strong, he was handsome, he was very virile. He's mostly known for his 12 labors, which were 12 tasks that he had to do. They were really, really hard tasks to atone for a very bad thing that he did in his early adulthood. And he has been known as the defender against evil and the protector of the lands. He was born to a god, Zeus. And as you all know, Zeus was married to Hera, and Zeus often liked to chase the ladies, and he would often like to explore mortal women. And he had a couple of nights of romance with Alcmene, who ended up being Heracles's mum. When Hera found out, she was very, very upset and basically spent her whole life making Heracles's life miserable. Hera was really not happy about the birth of Heracles, and so sent some serpents to kill him, but Hercules killed the serpents. So he was very, very strong, a very strong kid. In his youth, he had all the best things. He had the best tutors. He did all the things: wrestling, fencing, archery, horseback, chariot riding. He did it all. He did music. His music teacher was a bit strict with him. Heracles didn't like it, so he killed him. And then his father, the very serious and sober, really simple and good man, Amphitryon, sent Heracles off to the countryside to tend to sheep and cattle and to stay out of trouble. That said, in his adulthood, Heracles did fall in love. He got married, he had kids, but then he went mad, he killed his wife, he killed his kids. He went to the Delphic oracle to seek some advice on how to atone for that or how to make sense of that in some way. And he was told that he had to complete these 12 labors, massive challenges where he had to kill some of the most monstrous monsters on the planet at the time. So he killed a lion, he killed a hydra, he killed a hind, a boar, and did loads of other things. Also in a way to placate Hera in a way. But that didn't work. She was always going to be very, very angry with him. He went on drinking sprees. He killed men accidentally on purpose. He married again. He had hundreds of children. He had loads and loads of sex with both men and women. He had countless other adventures along the way. He had a very, very painful death, an excruciating death, but he ultimately became a constellation and he lived with the gods. So again, I'm thinking about Diogenes wanting to emulate Hercules. And I'm just wondering, we have a murderer here. We have an absent father, so many children left to their own devices. And of course, he killed the first 3. We have a cross-dresser, a philanderer, and a drunkard. He actually went to the god of wine and wanted to engage in a drinking competition. Heracles, of course, lost to Dionysus, but that tells you that this person kind of had an attitude to life that was a bit larger than life, I guess, maybe even egotistical to a certain degree. He was also a cross-dresser. He actually spent a year as a slave to Queen Omphale, who you see there pictured, who wanted him to dress as a woman and perform sort of women's duties, so sewing and stuff like that. It's a really odd things in his life. He was a bit of a narcissist, you could say. After he did something really, really bad, he went to the oracle again and for advice and help and ways to atone. And the oracle on that occasion was silent, had nothing for him. So he started ripping apart the temple of Apollo and then decided to steal the tripod, the sacred tripod upon which the priestess would sit and deliver the oracle. And he wanted to steal that tripod because he was going to go and set up his own personal oracle. So again, that tells you something about this guy, which is, I don't know, concerning in a way. But that said, my heart goes out to him because he really, really was tormented. Hera, the goddess, the angry goddess, was always angry at him and just devoted his lifetime to making it quite miserable. And oddly enough, despite all of this, he is also considered a philosopher. There's a very interesting reference to the use of the word philosophize, sort of in the verb, like the action verb to do philosophy. One of the earliest uses of the word appears, and I have the academic Christopher Moore from Penn State University to thank for this. I found it in one of his papers. You can Google it. It's Heracles as a philosopher, and it's available online. So one of the earliest references of philosophizing as this verb, as this activity that you do, is in reference to Heracles, of all people. Herodotus, who was a mythographer, said that Heracles philosophized until his death. Heracles' friend Licymnius had this to say about him, that he was basically unimpressive and unadorned, good to the greatest degree, confined from all Sophia in action and unversed in talking. So Heracles doesn't really come across as one of the intellectual types of philosophers, but Christopher Moore suggests that Heracles is distinguished from those philosophers who strive for theoretical knowledge, that he is a philosopher in the sense of someone who, in what he does and how he lives, is to an unusual degree influenced by a concern for wisdom. And in this image here, you can see him so physically engaged in the act of destroying this lion. And I guess that's a really interesting way to approach philosophy for us. A kind of embodied, a doing activity rather than a sitting in an armchair type of activity. So going back to the Cynics and the Stoics, Diogenes is using this language that is reminiscent of Hercules. He says he's fighting a campaign to clean up human life. So I guess he's trying to emulate the fighting spirit of Heracles. Simplistically speaking, Diogenes is writing to Crates and says again that your rough cloak is your superpower, let's say. It's the equivalent of Heracles's lion skin. Heracles held a club, but you hold a stick. That's your superpower, as opposed to Heracles's club, which he needed to kill lions and hydras. And your knapsack is all you need. So in this way, choosing this life, the spirit of Heracles will still rise in you. You'll be able to rise above every adversity. So this is just such an interesting invitation for us. And of course, Crates was called a philosophical Hercules, and you can see again the same language. He was combating anger and envy and greed and all the monstrous monsters in a similar way that Heracles was combating real monsters. They were real, even though they were myths. Cleanthes was called a second Hercules, and Zeno, of course, overheard someone reading a story about Heracles in Xenophon's Memorabilia, which is a text of memories about Socrates, and that literally changed his life path. Now, the story that Zeno was overheard was written by a guy called Prodicus, and Prodicus was a sophist, so he was like this freelance educator, and he went from city to city with his Heracles fable, and he made lots of money on this fable, and he charmed the cities like an Orpheus. And Orpheus was the legendary musician who could just turn your heart with a string and some music. And Prodicus, you can kind of imagine him on a TED talk with a talk about Heracles that went absolutely viral. The story is quite interesting. It uses kind of a very dramatic technique the technique of the great dichotomy, good versus evil, vice versus virtue, excellence versus not excellence. And it went absolutely viral back in the day. And it was basically an invitation about Hercules, where he is invited to make a choice between a good life, as in a capital G, good life, or just a good life, a small g, pleasurable, easy life. And speaking of life and choices, let's take a deep breath and remind ourselves what we're here for. We have to do 3 things in this hour. We want to choose our life path. We want to find what our superpower is, and we want to identify our role in life. So we've already started talking about life paths. Let's get into it. We're going to make a choice, everyone. So back to the Prodicus story. Basically, Prodicus comes up with this story, and he wrote it, he invented it. It doesn't appear anywhere else in any of the other myths. And it's a way of somehow philosophizing and ethicizing Heracles into a guy who can contemplate and make a kind of sober and stoic choice in life. This is what the scenes look like according to some artists. You can see that Heracles has his mouth shut. He's actually not engaged in the dialogue. He actually doesn't really say much in this dialogue. The 2 women that approach him, one is vice, one is virtue, one is excellence, one is not excellent, one is good, one is bad, whichever dichotomy you want to choose. They're the ones doing the philosophical talking. And you can see that Heracles is, he's got his beautiful body, he's strong, he's beefy, he's very macho, and he's really trying to get into this philosophical argument and take a moment out of the big adventures to contemplate. And here's another image about this dramatic point for Heracles. And you can see there's a lot of movement here. There's people sort of whispering in his ear and pulling him and pushing him. And I can feel that it's sweaty and smelly and like just full on. And I think this is so interesting because none of us are going to get those quiet moments to kind of contemplate whether we're on the right path. Our philosophy will have to happen in chaos, in movement, in action. So, but actually, having said that, I am going to invite us to just a short quiet moment, and I'm going to talk you through the Prodicus story. So what I want you to do is just take a deep breath, sit back, relax. I'm going to read the story to you, slightly adapted for our modern sensibilities. And what I want you to do is just picture yourself in that moment. And we're going to be asked to make a choice. So, and feel free to close your eyes if you can, if you want, or just focus on the image. Maybe you can grab your computer and go and sit somewhere more comfortable. But we start like this. You head out to a quiet place and you find it. Maybe it's by a little stream or out in the countryside under a tree. And you don't have to go far. Remember, Marcus Aurelius in Meditations has said that you can retreat internally. So you can actually do this right here and now. You don't need to go off into the countryside. So you're there pondering which road to take. Now, you might be at the same age as Heracles was. He was just becoming an adult, out into the world and kind of thinking, all right, so what am I supposed to do with my life? Which road do I take? I would invite you to do this contemplation regularly throughout your life. Maybe you're at an age where you need to revisit that time in your young adulthood where there was a choice to be made. Maybe you do this every morning. In any case, wherever you are, and right now you're here with me, 2 beings of great physical stature appear before you. And these beings might be women, they might be men. You might place them anywhere on the gender continuum. They need to be attractive to you, sexually, physically. One is more serious and sober, dressed in a more plain outfit. The other is really dressed up, made up, revealing parts of their body for you in an attempt to entice you. They walk up to you and they can see that you're sitting there wondering which road to take because you are at the crossroads. And this is a deep, dramatic moment, a classic dramatic moment in many, many stories, the choice. The second one runs up to you first. They are the one that is made up and very, very sensual and revealing parts of their body to you. And they say, hey, you, I see that you are in doubt as to which path to take. Follow me. I will be your guide. I will take you down the most pleasurable and easiest path. With me, you will experience everything that life has to offer, all the sweets of life. There'll be no war, no worries. You will have loads of food and loads of drink. I have vouchers for you to all the best restaurants, a variety of food, every cuisine imaginable. You'll have takeaways and delivery services free to your door whenever you want them. They also say that you will have entertainment at your fingertips. They offer you a lifetime subscription to Netflix, to Spotify, to Kindle, so you can always have entertainment whenever you want it. Even if you don't want it, it'll be there for you. You'll have clothing delivered to your door. And they're also offering you a lifetime subscription to a pornography streaming service and some vouchers to an escort service. So you never need to worry about going out and seducing someone to satisfy and please your sexual urges. You stir for a moment because the offer sounds really, really good. And you ask what their name is. And they say, hey, I'm happiness. But actually, the haters, they call me vice. And that's all you say. You're intrigued. You're quite intrigued. It would be nice not to have to suffer. Meanwhile, the other being comes up to you, takes a sober and serious step forward towards you and say, hey, I know what you're thinking. You're suffering. And if you're not suffering right now, you were suffering yesterday or last week or last year. And because you're a human being, you will suffer again in the future. So I know that that other path is enticing. It's understandable that you'll want to attempt the problem of solve the problem of human suffering with pleasure. But let me say, that path is not for you. I know your character. I know your parents. I know where you come from. I know your talents. I know that you are capable of so much more. I know what you are capable of. So follow me and I will help you find your way. Yes, I won't lie. It will be difficult. This is human life after all. But it's natural for things to get difficult. It's the way things are. And you need to work for things. If you want career success, you need to work and suffer for it sometimes. If you want friends, you need to work hard at being a good friend. If you want to love, you need to work hard at loving. If you want a strong and healthy body, you need to eat and drink in moderation and exercise. What good is it if you're given all the pleasures before you need them? What good is it to have all the different tastes and restaurants in the world to, start your appetite when you aren't even hungry? What are expensive wines worth when you're actually not even thirsty? So what if you have sexual opportunity and pornography and toys when you don't even give yourself time to feel your natural urges? And what about music and books and easy sex to make you sleepy? You don't even want to go to sleep. You're just bored. I can help you want the things that you choose. I can help you crave pleasure. in its natural time. I can help you forge good relationships with your fellow human beings. I can help you love and be loved. I can help you serve and be respected and even remembered after life. This is the story that Zeno potentially heard that time in Athens when he said, "Hey, I need a philosopher." It was Socrates speaking those words, and Xenophon wrote them down. And Socrates is now telling us that you should really think about these things. You should try to show some regard for the life that lies ahead of you. So let us take Socrates' invitation and have a moment to think about these things. So grab your pencil and just freestyle write. Just quickly, don't think about it too much. What came up for you just then in that meditation? What is your crossroads moment right now? What choices do you have to make? Which path will you take? What do you need to pay attention to? So just spend some time collecting your thoughts on the page, and whenever you're ready, let me know in the chat the choice that you have made. And if you like, you can tell me a little bit about your crossroads moment, and I'll let you there with your thoughts for a minute or two. Everyone, if you would like to share anything in the chat, that would be lovely. I can see, Greg, a big crossroads for you and Andi. You knew each other since high school, and you reconnected in your late 30s. It was deciding to make a life together. That involved leaving a position where you were up for early tenure and promotion, and moving to New York, we could finally start a life together in the same place. Definitely the right decision at the crossroads. Okay. That sounds really lovely, everyone. Let's see what else is happening. Hey, JB, you had the life pleasures at least some of the time, the value of genuine, valuable relationships over. That is overpowering. But I'd say the person on my road is more the uglier twin of easy pleasures, depression, who doesn't tell me about these inducements. That's really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, I think the road to pleasure is quite interesting, and we're rethinking addiction lately, aren't we? As a kind of a solution to human suffering. Everybody in this room is suffering in some way or another. So that road of easy pleasure, I think we need to be a bit kind with ourselves, because it is a response to trying to solve the problem of pain and suffering. Wayne, how are you going? The story reminded you of going on vacation, always eating out for almost every meal. Eventually you don't allow yourself absolutely to get hungry and you end up enjoying the great restaurants. Yeah, totally. Sharon, what is going to be the last phase of going to be? I can fade away in retirement and have my personal pleasures, or stay engaged with the world. Okay. This is really lovely, everyone. I'm going to share my screen once again. I'm going to lose the chat, unfortunately. But let me just see what Tim's saying. I just turned 40, which got me thinking about several crossroads. One is my career, where I feel stuck and unfulfilled, unrewarded. Time to reconsider and take care. And Tim, it's so interesting, because we do need to reconsider and take care. And Cicero, I don't know if I'm actually going to quote that bit, but Cicero actually says that we might need to go back and rethink and redeliberate and see if we've gone off track and come back to ourselves. And I think we're getting towards that there. So Cicero's got some good advice for you there, if you need to turn to anyone. Thank you so much for sharing your responses there, everyone. I know these can be really private musings, but let's keep going, because I fear we'll run out of time. I just want to sit here with your comments, but let us keep going. So thank you for sharing your crossroads moment. So I guess I didn't ask you explicitly, but it looks like we're all choosing the path of excellence. We all want to either engage in the world, rethink, redeliberate, pay attention. And that is pretty much what Socrates is saying, is to live deliberately, to pay attention to who you are. But how do you kind of do that? Let's maybe explore this a bit further by diving into the superpower question. Let's find our superpower. So I'm going to turn to Cicero for some help here. Cicero says that, you know what, we can't all have experiences like Heracles. I mean, who gets the opportunity to go out into the countryside, hang out for a bit, at the crossroads, have these two wonderful beings appear before you, have philosophical argument and work it all out. Normally we're so, as Cicero says, imbued with the teachings of our parents that we fall irresistibly into their manners. So it's almost as if we've already stepped into roles and living and habits that we have picked up along the way from stories told to us. I mean, when was the last time you remember that you could quietly just sit there and really get to the crux of who you are and what you're supposed to be doing in this world and what your character is and what's appropriate to you and what's reasonable, without having all these voices in your head? Go back to that image of Heracles, the one, that really physical one, where there's, you know, people whispering in his ear. Vice is pulling him along her pathway. I mean, that's how it feels sometimes. There's so much noise around us, or maybe it's just like that for me. Others, says Cicero, that we just kind of drift with popular opinion. And so, but some of us are able to, you know, by chance or natural ability, kind of enter upon the right path without parental guidance. He goes on to say that some are able, and I think that we can make time if we live deliberately, that we can find our marked natural ability, or maybe we have exceptional advantages of education and culture. But we need time to consider carefully what career in life we prefer to follow, which is what Tim's going to look at right now. And this deliberation is what we really need to focus on and turn to ourselves individually. We have to find our natural bent, he says. I love that term. And Cicero is inviting us to delve into our native disposition to kind of find out what is proper for us. And you kind of need to know what your native disposition is in order to work out how to act in any individual way, but also how to act along the course of your life. I often find myself going off track because I haven't paid attention. And this is quite simplistic. I've only pulled out a few bits from Cicero. It's much more complex than this. So go ahead and dive in. But what I want to do is draw your attention to what it might be, what your native disposition might be. Remember that Heracles, when he was young, he killed the snakes that Hera sent. So from a really, really young age, he exhibited certain talents, certain skills. I'm going to invite you in a moment to kind of go back to that childhood moment. And if you don't want to go back to your childhood, you don't have to go there. You can go anywhere where you feel that you have a connection with something intrinsic in you, something yours, something obvious, something easy in a way that came naturally to you. Because you need to kind of pinpoint what these talents are. Sometimes we're often told to go and do that, be a lawyer when you want to be an artist, or be a doctor when you want to be an artist. I don't know. So we need to go in deep and find out what our superpowers are, what our natural inclinations are, or even what we have found and learned along the way through our experience and our engagement in life and books and people, what we'd like to emulate that we see in other people. We need to find this stuff out because Epictetus kind of talks about Heracles. I mean, he says famously, what kind of a man would Heracles have been if he hadn't had shown up on the journey and to fight the lions, etc. Imagine Heracles just wrapping himself up and going back to sleep. If he hadn't been deliberate, if he hadn't, had that crossroads moment, what would have happened to Heracles? Basically, Heracles would not have become Heracles. Epictetus says, what would have been the use of Heracles' big, strong arms, his strength, his endurance, his nobility of mind, if he didn't show up on the appropriate path for him and exercised himself in the manner that was appropriate to him? So that's kind of whizzed through that bit, but I'm going to invite you back to the page and just dive in for just a minute or two and dive in and think back to that moment before all the stories, before your parents told you what to do, before the teachers said what's right and what's wrong, before social media, tells you what to do. What is your marked natural ability? What is your natural bent? What are your behaviors and mannerisms that are yours? What are your thoughts and emotions, beliefs, etc.? Choose one or two or three of those. Who are the role models that you want to draw from, adopt and learn from experience? So take a minute to dive into that. And we're going to speed up now because, time. But spend a few moments thinking about that. And when you're ready, pop something in the chat for us. And I invite you all to engage in the chat as well. And this activity is really nice to go back to and really spend time going back to those moments, as I mentioned, where you could actually sit in silence and not know and not hear other stories, so that you can really tap in and find out who it is that you are, what your natural ability is. I work with a lot of people who are recovering creativity in later life, and they always go back to some childhood moment where it was just a natural thing for them to draw or to sing, etc. But they went off and became the lawyer or the doctor or the accountant or whatever it is, and revisit that in later life. So I can see some of you are sharing. I'm just going to stop the screen share for a moment so I can dip into some of your responses. And Kellis, teaching. Absolutely, Kellis. Learning by trying. My natural ability was to learn quickly when I was a child. Interesting. That is so interesting. Scott, when I was younger and out of college, I used to think about how I could do something to help humanity. Considered going to medical school to become a doctor, but you didn't, ended up pursuing achievement and money and forgetting all about your earlier wish to do something bigger. It led to deep dissatisfaction and anxiety. You started to move back to that path and that you were meant to be on, and it has done so much for your life satisfaction. Absolutely. I think it's a really important move to go back to that natural childhood self and see what's going on there. Okay, I am loving your sharing. Thank you so much for sharing, everyone, and hanging in there with me, but I'm going to press on. What have we got up next? Yes, this is a fun little activity, which I've borrowed from Todd Herman. So if you don't already know, Hercules was not Hercules when he was born. He was born with the name Alcaeus. And then over time, as he showed up, did the labors, went and killed the lions and the hydras and all of that. Only later did he take the name Heracles, which means glory of Hera. Basically, he would become glorious by performing labors and achieving challenges that Hera set out for him, because remember, she made his life a struggle. So in this book, Todd Herman's book, The Alter Ego Effect. Now, Todd Herman is a coach of like really ultra people, like ultra athletes and ultra singers and Beyoncés and all that sort of, those sorts of people. He uses an alter ego invitation where he asks people to become a kind of an alter ego, a hero. And one of the activities is to come up with a name. And the name actually works as, like, for example, Heracles wore his lion's skin, and that was him showing up as Heracles. So it almost works as a trigger. As the name, once he took on the name Heracles, must have worked as a kind of a trigger to become that character. So what you're going to do really quickly, I'll just give you 30 seconds to come up with something, and you can always go back later. Craft your heroic name. That's going to be this name that triggers you to be this person that's on the right track. Of course, you're going to be a work in progress and it'll change over time. You can either combine two names, like Stoic Kate, for example. You might give yourself a title, Kate, Commander of Excellence. You might be a fictional name, Katie Courage, or you might combine your name with a role model, Kate Aurelius. So come up with a name. If you like, share it in the chat. It will be loads of fun if you shared your name in the chat. And I'm just going to give you like 30 seconds to do that. And if you ever dive into the Todd Herman book and you like it, do make contact, because I just find it's just such a fun book. And he works wonders with ultra. I'm calling them ultra people for some reason. Okay, I'm going to quickly just check the chat. I have to stop my screen. Diego Cato, lovely. Arius, after Arius Didymus, yes, good choice, Travis. Marcus Cato Picard, lovely, absolutely beautiful. All right, everyone, I'm going to pop back in to the presentation. Actually, I'll just check one more. Bat Phil, awesome, Phil. JB, your tertium quid, beautiful. Okay, I love that. Thank you. All right, let's keep going. Where are we? We've chosen a life path, or at least made the first step towards one intentionally, deliberately. We have found our superpower, which we've kind of sensed that maybe we can identify it if we go back to that earlier kind of natural state of childhood, maybe. Not to say that we won't pick up superpowers along the way through experience and life experience and role models. And finally, it is time to identify our role in life. Now, let's go back to Heracles for a bit. He acted in various ways, sometimes oddly disturbing ways. He killed people. He appeared in a contemplative moment. One of the most disturbing ones for me is this story of him being a slave for a year, dressing up as a woman and doing needlework. For some reason, I find that incongruent with the macho kind of Herculean image. But Epictetus says, for a rational being, only what is contrary to nature is unendurable, while anything that is reasonable can be endured. So was that year spent as a slave, cross-dressing, endurable and reasonable for Heracles? Maybe it was. Remember, he was on this path to become glorious, to become the glory of Hera. So maybe a year in slavery was part of that and was appropriate to him. None of us can really know. Only he can know. Epictetus says that to determine what is reasonable and unreasonable, not only do we have to form a judgment, so we actually have to form a judgment. No one can make this call for us. That's the hard thing. And that's why I think we often fall off track, because we kind of think that other people are going to make these calls for us. But ultimately it's us. We have to judge these things in terms of how they stand in relation to our own specific character. And so this story kind of reminds me of discourses where Epictetus is bringing up different examples. So he's talking about the roles that we play and what's appropriate and what's not, and how you can be, how you can live with integrity. And there's this great example of the athlete, right, who was in danger of dying if his genitals weren't cut off. And so his brother, the athlete's brother, who's a philosopher, goes to him and says, hey, bro, so what are you going to do? Are you going to have this bit cut off you and let's go to the gymnasium? But the athlete would not submit to that, would not. He set his mind against it and he died, which kind of seems odd, right? Because he's an athlete. And if he can compete without his genitals, then isn't that appropriate for being an athlete? So everyone in discourses is like going at Epictetus saying, well, what? And sort of saying, how did he do that? Was it as an athlete? Because it would seem appropriate for an athlete, or as a philosopher? Epictetus says, no, he was acting in the role of a man. Now, some men, says Epictetus, would be happy to have their heads cut off if they could continue living without a head. But he says that this is what is meant by acting according to one's character. So you really have to know who you are and deliberate on this. So other examples of these deliberations, of course, the famous beard episode for Epictetus. They're teasing him, I think. I can't remember the scenario exactly, but someone says, come now, Epictetus, shave off your beard. Oh, I think it's someone in power. And Epictetus says, I'm a philosopher. As a philosopher, I'll reply, I won't shave it off. And this person in power will say, then I'll have you beheaded. And Epictetus will say, well, if it pleases you, behead me. And so basically he's acting as a philosopher. Now, sometimes I think if Epictetus had a family and children, he probably would have said, all right, take my beard. But then again, maybe not, because Epictetus really was a philosopher. You know, sometimes our roles will contradict each other. And Chris kind of mentioned that in the 4 roles discussion that he had earlier. And I think there's that great example of Crates, who married Hipparchia, and they were both cynic philosophers. So marriage really worked well for them because they could be cynics and they could be married and in love. That's not going to work for everyone. You might need to change your spouse, but I'll leave that for another discussion. And another famous example is the chamber pot example. This is a Roman chamber pot kind of toilet that you hold up for people to do their business in. And the discussion is it reasonable for one person to hold out a chamber pot for another, simply in view of the fact that if he fails to do so, he'll get beaten up and he won't be fed, he won't be paid his wages. Whereas for another person, it won't seem the right thing to do. Well, it will be totally intolerable, totally beneath them. And Epictetus kind of says, well, you know, it's food and nourishment and payment is of great value to you. So probably, yeah, hold up the chamber pot. But some people will say, no way, that is beneath me. And then Epictetus kind of says, well, you know, I can't offer anything else on that because only you know yourself. Only you know what is beneath you or what is right for you, what is appropriate, what isn't. And you learn along the way through examples and you test things out in real life. Heracles tested loads of things out and got things wrong, specifically by killing people accidentally or sometimes on purpose. So he tested things out. You have to test what's appropriate for you. And so let's do a bit of testing now. Hit the page again for a couple of minutes. We're almost out of time, but I'll give you a minute to make some notes about your chamber pot moment. Okay, what is your chamber pot? It could be, something at work that you feel is beneath you. It could be something at home, it could be something in your marriage, it could be anything. Work out if it's appropriate to you or not. How do you value things? Only you can work that out. Work out if it's tolerable. Can you tolerate it? Is it tolerable? Is it endurable? Remember that Heracles spent a year as a slave dressing up in women's clothing. That said, that queen did invite him to her bed, so he did have some payoff for that story. Anyway, I'll let you get to your chamber pot moments. Just a few moments there, and we're almost nearing the end of this. And please do share in the chat if you would like what your chamber pot moment is, or what your chamber pot is. These are really, really hard. Oftentimes we are conflicted. And oftentimes one role needs to take precedent over another. I'm just going to stop sharing this screen and peek into the chat for a bit to see what your chamber pots are, if you're sharing any. Greg, your Mr. B, current job is your chamber pot, but it is tolerable and pays me enough to endure it. Yep, good. You've made your choice. Good, strong. That could change. That could change later. You'll work it out. 017108, in my long years working the NHS, I have found an increasing amount of pot chambers to get used to, but I feel that this is tolerable because I always felt my job was useful to others. Yeah, wow, beautiful. You're seeing the bigger picture. That's really quite moving. Thank you for sharing that. That's really lovely. Ray, you quit a job where you had to be dishonest. That was out of the question for you. JB, very relatable chamber pot from Mr. B, though I actually like your present job. Sounds good. All right, everyone, this is beautiful. I would love to sit here and just read all big social functions. Travis, yes, totally. I get that. All right, let me pop back into the slides for our final little activity. And this is we've done it, everyone. We've chosen our life path. We've chosen excellence. We've found our superpowers. Work in progress. We'll still need to explore and develop that. We've identified our role in life. So that's linking to the chamber pot moment. And finally, some homework. This is what I want you to do. And if you feel the urge to share with me, I would love it. They're my socials. I hope I've got them right. I'll also give a link at the end on the next slide where you can email me. I would love to know your stories. So yeah, I want you to write your story. Think ahead to a time in the future. You're dead. Someone, maybe a modern day Prodicus, is telling your story to inspire others to live excellently. Who have you become in that future moment? You've clearly become someone that people want to emulate, and clearly become someone that inspires others to live excellent lives. So write that story and keep it privately. One thing I like to do about writing future stories is handwrite them if that is right for you, and actually post them to yourself and leave them unopened for a while and then open them later. They're really interesting. And if you know Benjamin Hardy, he does a lot of work with future selves and future writing. So yeah, that's your homework task from me. Think ahead to the future. A time after you're dead, someone is writing a story about you to inspire others to live excellently. I want you to write that story, and I hope that your journey is excellent. Please stay in touch. I've got a little bit.ly link there. So it's bit.ly/m/KK. Stay in touch with me, share your stories with me, and let's have another storytelling moment again sometime in the future. And because I have 1 minute, I'm just going to share one more thing, Phil and Greg, if that is okay.
Sure.
And it's just something that I pushed to the end, but I think I have a minute just to share it with you. It's from a poem that was actually written for the Odysseus myth. It's by Kavli, and I've adapted it here for us and Heracles. So everyone, as you set out on your excellent journey, hope your road is a long one, full of adventure, full of discovery. The lion, the hydra, angry Hera, don't be afraid of them. You'll never find things like that on your way as long as you keep your thoughts raised high, as long as a rare excitement stirs your spirit and your body. The lion, the hydra, angry Hera, you won't encounter them unless you bring them along inside your soul, unless your soul sets them up in front of you. Or in the less poetic version from the Stoics, it isn't your monsters that torment you, but the judgments you form about them. It is up to you to conquer them. And that is well and truly the end from me.
Well, thank you very much for that workshop, Kathryn. So, and people see how they can get in touch with you as well. So